Thanks, Cami, and thank you all for being a part of the panel. I know this is the Business Owners Summit, but I'd like for everyone here that is a business owner or a partner in their business I want you to raise your hand and keep it up. So if you're a business owner here, if you would raise your hand and raise it high because it's kind of hard to see up here. All right, now if you keep it up, if you plan on exiting that business, take your hands down. Okay, all right, thanks. You can put your hands down. So that was a trick question. You're all going to exit your business. So you see what's coming. You may be wheeled out on a gurney under a white sheet. That may be how you exit your business, but you're going to exit it somehow, some way, whether that's how or whether you sell it or whether you pass it on to the next generation. And so what we want to talk about is help you start that planning if you haven't already to get the right people and processes in place for that eventuality. Everybody here has sold a business, and we want to share some of the lessons learned with you guys. So we're going to start with just a quick sort of round robin questions. I've got so it's two questions, and so we each kind of go around. So Sunny, we'll start with you. What year did you sell your company, and what was your motivation for selling? Whether it was, just preface for everybody, whether it was right timing, interested buyer, that was part of your plan, ready for a change, retirement, wanted to do something else with your time, et cetera. So what year did you sell your company, and what was your motivation for selling?
Yeah, so I'll use the first time we sold it, was 2002. Our business really made more sense as a product line of another company. Like, we couldn't grow at the rate we wanted to grow. Now, we came off of 40% quarter-over-quarter growth, and it had slowed down to like 20%. And we thought it made more sense for it to be part of another company.
Gotcha. David, what about you?
We had multiple dynamics. So we had the family dynamic where my father was looking to retire. My brother had some other interests he was looking to pursue. We also had the right timing in our industry with an interested buyer who hit a number that made it almost couldn't.
So what year was that?
2020.
2020. Okay. Michael or Debbie?
Okay. Yeah, both of us. We can talk. We actually were not positioned to sell at the time we decided to sell in 2021. It was through an accident. Michael had an accident, and we went down the path of what are we worth? And we decided after that, going down the 9-month path, and
turns out we were worth more than we thought.
Yeah, yeah. So we thought, well, this might be a good time. We're almost 3 decades in, and decided that this might be a time, and so we went ahead and did it almost 2.5 years ago.
So some of you guys mentioned it, but to clarify, we'll go back through. What was the type of buyer? Strategic buyer,
private equity,
private equity, et cetera.
Private equity.
Private equity.
Strategic
buyer. Okay. And I missed myself in the first round. I sold a company in 2018. It was the right timing market and had a couple interested buyers. Was the reason, and it was a private equity, which we sold to. So now, second pair of questions: did you roll any equity into the new business, and are you still involved in any capacity as an employee, board member, advisor, et cetera?
Yes, quite a bit. Too much, in fact. And yeah, it was 20 years ago, so thankfully, no. I got out of there as quick as I could.
David?
We did. We rolled a meaningful amount, and I still run the company today.
Gotcha.
We definitely rolled in.
Yes, and I'm on the board.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I stepped off. So.
I rolled a little bit equity, but not involved in that business anymore. So, okay, thank you guys. There's some warm-up questions. Just to give everybody a little context too about you guys. I'm sorry, I've got my back to you guys over here, but so a little more in-depth questions. Michael, Debbie, we want to start with you two. And so by the time you sold the business, you guys have been out of the day-to-day for a while. You're working on the business, not in the business. And so what was your motivation to build a leadership team so you didn't have to work in the business? And share a little bit about how you did that.
I think the first primary reason that we built the management team early on was because we believed in building people, and we, number one, wanted to have more time to do other things. And so by having a management team, growing the team, it allowed us to take a lot of time to go learn to fly jets. It allowed us to go build our dream home in Colorado and spend more time doing other things.
Yep, I would agree with that. We early on recognized the importance of putting together a senior management leadership team, and we started developing. In the beginning, it was department heads. We didn't want to see the silos. We wanted to see the teamwork working together, and early on, we were not believers. For the first 7 years, we were open. We were not believers for anyone that read the book. And then 7 years in, we became believers, brought the Lord into our business, and just started growing it. And really, it was the culture from that point forward. But those initial, we ended up having 12 senior managers. So the 12 disciples, we decided to go ahead and just start developing each of them.
Tell briefly how you started a book club, is probably not the right word, but with your senior management team. Describe that just to help kind of build the culture and get their engagement.
I think you're referring to in the very early days when we had our department leaders, we got them together, and I read a book by Tom Peters called In Pursuit of Wow. And I loved the book, and we got everybody a book, and we gave them a pen and a highlighter, and we went around the room and said, okay, we want you to read a chapter between now and next Wednesday and highlight 3 things in that chapter. And when we come back together, we're going to go around the room, and we are going to have each one of you tell us what page you're on and what that was that you highlighted, and then put the book down and put your hand on your heart for a moment and tell me, why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? And when you go around the room and you do that, what happens is people open up, and oftentimes they'll say, this is really important to me because it reminds me of my grandmother, or it reminds me of something maybe a childhood experience, or I think we're doing that, but we suck at it, and we need to get better at it, or this is something we really should go after. And so by doing this for many years with many books, individuals will open up and talk about things that you would not get them to open up and talk about otherwise, and you end up building a very tight niche team by going through this exercise. I think that's what you were referring to.
Thanks. Okay, David, you guys had really rapid growth for many, many years with Stripazone. You were thinking about what's next for the future of the company, what comes after the sale. And so share a little bit about your thought process leading up to a sale and why you decided to stay running the company.
Yeah. Well, I'm still passionate about the business. I still love it. I feel like it's almost like a child, right? We're responsible for everything good and everything bad about it. Still had a lot of runway in front of it, but with an institutional buyer, we were able to create a thesis and really take a nationwide approach and leverage some real capital to continue in an industry that had a lot of upside. Technology, as we've heard earlier, with AI is coming available, but also within our industry, it had been a little antiquated, and being able to leverage that and move forward, the time was right for that.
You're unique in the rest of the panel members. You're still in the business, still running the business. Any advice you would have for any business owners who think they might sell majority or part of their company but stay involved in the business through that?
Sure. So succession planning is a really fun topic. I would encourage everyone to engage in it. We often think about it as a deliberate exit of the business, but sometimes it can be involuntary. So we need to think about that. But with our employees, it's a very fun conversation to talk about what's their desires, where they want to go. And I think I've seen many of my people light up when we start saying, hey, where do you want to be 5 years, 10 years from now? Is it in the company? And what do you need now? What do you feel like your weaknesses are? How can we develop those? How can we show that we want to invest in you to develop you to be here long term and give them that foundation to know that they're going to be a piece of this future?
Thanks. Sunny, you wrote a book about your experience. Everybody's got a copy. Thank you for that. And so your lessons in selling your company, buying it back, reselling it, you recommend in your book and your talks that business owners really think about what happens after the sale, the importance of all of the stakeholders involved in a sale. So share a little bit about who are the stakeholders and why a win for them helps everybody in a sale.
So I ask a question first to frame this a little bit for the audience. I want you to imagine you have two buyers and they're identical in all respects, including price. And you're getting to the day where you're going to pick one and they call you and they say, hey, look, we've kind of thought about what we want to do with the business. And it's pretty clear to us that we just are going to fire everybody. But we know you're not going to like that, so how much more do we have to pay? Most of the owners I know, their answer is not a number, it's usually an expletive. That turns out there's a ton more than money at stake in these businesses, right? It's part of why we do what we do, but for many of us it's secondary or tertiary. And so here's the idea around stakeholders, is figure out who you care about and who cares about you. And so for many of us, like the easy ones are things like your customers and your employees, maybe your suppliers if you've got a key supplier. And if you can figure out what you want for them and what you want for yourself and what you want for your family and get clear enough on it to write it down, it will transform your sale experience. Because what happens is most of the people involved in the sale of a company, they care about money. So the whole thing becomes about money, money, money. And I promise you the day after a sale, the money thing is not on your mind. And a year after the sale, when an employee calls you crying because the new buyer did some terrible thing and you're like watching them dismantle your business, you're going to care about a lot more than money. So the spirit of the book is really about getting clear about who you care about, what you want for them, and you can ask for it. And there's no perfect deal, there's no perfect transaction, but if you know you care about your employees in this way, you'll ask different questions of a buyer.
That's pretty challenging to think about. What is thing? A lot of people when they first think about selling a company or they hear about somebody else selling a company, they think about, oh, how much did you sell it for? How's your life changed? All those sorts of things. So it's pretty challenging to think about how has life changed for your employees or your vendors or your clients, but also maybe even your family. So share also a little bit about how how you recommend other business owners, how they engage their spouse, their family to think about, hey, we've been all in this business for probably a long period of time. How would you encourage them to talk to their spouse about what happens next?
Yeah, so step number one is actually talk to them. Like, don't make any assumptions about what they want or don't want. Hopefully they know you better than anybody else in the world. And like one of the things we do as business owners and leaders is we believe our own press releases. Like that's part of the game, is to sort of believe you live in a world that doesn't exist yet and then go create it. That skill is not helpful for self-reflection because you start believing your own BS. And so the spouse can be a great foil for that, of saying like, what do you think I care about based on knowing me for all these years? What do you care about? What's important to you? And I'll give you a simple example. If you're going to sell to a strategic and your plan is to stay on and their headquarters is in New York, practical reality is like if you work at a company and you have a senior role, you're going to end up spending a good bit of time at headquarters. And so you might have gone over time working yourself little by little out of the business more and more, and you get to spend a decent amount of time with your family. Now you sell the business, you've got this rollover to a strategic, and you find yourself on the Sunday night flight to New York City, returning on the Thursday flight, and all of a sudden you've disappeared. Like, that could be a really bad outcome, and you don't even know it's coming because you didn't think about how you want to spend your day, and you didn't talk to your spouse about like, what is it that you want for you, and what is it that you want for the family, and so forth. And I'll add one other very brief thing. Often as owners in this servant leadership mindset, we place everybody else's needs ahead of our own. Like, that's a default, and it's kind of a winning game to play that way. And this is one of the few times where at least being honest about what it is that you need and want, you personally, isn't self-centered or egocentric. It's an important part of the process to be really honest with yourself about what it is that you want.
Yeah, thanks. So got a last batch of just round robin questions for us all, and I think we may have just a couple of minutes left after that for questions from the audience. So if you're thinking that you've got a question for somebody on the panel, you can be thinking about that now. So one question at a time, we'll go around, starting with Sunny. What's the biggest misconception people have about selling a business?
So the biggest misconception is that you need to be a hero. Businesses that don't have hero CEOs generally are worth more than ones that do. So this hero CEO that can do everything and is involved in everything and knows everything, and they're so critical to the business and it doesn't run without them, those businesses actually have fewer options than ones where the CEO is kind of lazy.
Or worked as well out of a job.
Right.
David, what would you say the biggest misconception is?
Yeah, that would be the delegation piece, would be huge on making that business worth more to sell, right? The misconception is just that you can, you now have all this extra time and money to just give away. Hit them.
Yeah.
Don't work that way.
Now,
Michael or Debbie, or both of you.
Yeah, I think the common misperception that at least we had going into this, and it was an education learning experience, was that everyone on the top level is going to get fired, you're going to stay on for 3 years, just the normal misconceptions. And we were thoroughly blessed with the private equity company that we actually sold to. They did everything. It was really important to Michael and I because we had family members working in the business as well, but for almost 30 years, you figure that everyone was family to us. We started with 4 or 5 people, and we ended up with hundreds. One location ended up with several locations, so it was really important for us to go into it with the idea that, listen, we don't have to sell. We don't have to do this. We're only going to do this if it makes sense. So I think the common misconception for us was they're going to come in and fire everyone, take over, bring in their own people, and that wasn't our situation, which was a huge blessing to us.
Yeah, I think it goes to Sunny's point. You have to be super clear on what you want. And for us, it was not about the money. It was about the culture. We made it very clear to our investment banking firm. We made it very clear to every possible private equity candidate or strategic candidate that we're not changing our culture. We're not changing our culture. We're not changing our culture.
Yeah.
Period. So if you don't like our culture, move aside, because we're not going to change it for you. If you want to acquire us for what we bring and who we are, and let's build that and grow that. And the group we chose has done exactly what they said they would do for the last 2.5 years. It's been an amazing, wonderful experience for us.
And
I think the misconception is most people who have never been through a transaction, have never been through an exit, us entrepreneurs who just someday dream about selling, we think that somebody's going to come in and make all these changes. Well, no, not necessarily, unless they're needed. I mean, if you don't have a strong sales leader, they're going to get you one. If you don't have a great CFO, they're going to get you one. If you don't have a management team, they're going to help build one for you, because their job is to grow that and create value over the next 4 to 7, 5 to 8 years so they can do it again. And there's many of our competitors in our space who have been private equity owned for 25 years, changing hands every 4 to 7 years, and we've never even known it, because the same management team is there, the same leaders are there, and they just keep growing and getting bigger, never even knowing that they've been private equity owned. Would you guys agree with that, Sunny?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, private equity gets a bad rap. Sometimes it deserves it. Often it deserves it. It's part of the reason we started Satori is because we got tired of the knuckleheads and thought we could kind of fix it by just showing the way. So don't expect nothing's going to change. Hopefully the changes are positive. I'll add 2 questions to ask. I mean, these are dangerous questions, and they will make your investment banker, if you have one, sweat and kind of freak out, which is that's a good sign. You can ask the question. It's okay to ask. Why do you want to buy the company?
Yep.
Most people don't actually ask that question.
Yep.
You'd be amazed at what people will tell you when you ask that question. And the other one is, well, what are you going to do with it?
Yep.
Yeah.
You just say, what are you going to do? And they'll start talking through. And I had one buyer for one of our portfolio companies, potential buyer. When I asked that question, they literally told us, well, they were just going to dismantle it. All I had to do was ask. Like, just ask these dangerous questions, and people will, because they come at the world through their own lens about the world is always just about money, which is sort of part of the private equity problem, they'll tell you if they're going to do crazy stuff to the business. You just have to ask.
Yep.
All right, so another quick question I need a quick answer to. What's one tip that you would give everyone about hiring and developing the right leadership team as you prepare for some type of succession? Sonny, we'll start with you.
There is no such thing as too expensive. There's only not good enough for that pay.
Good. David?
Cultural fit and promoting from within. If you have the choice.
Yeah. Yes,
Debbie?
developing the culture, developing your leadership from within is great. And if you recognize that that person is not the right person for that seat on the bus, good to great, go ahead and put them in a different position, or sometimes you have to allow them to
Pay a
the
lot,
wild.
hire people who are way smarter than you. That's the answer.
Good. We'll let that sink in a second. So just want to go around, see if any of you have any sort of, couple of last words of advice that we didn't already talk about that you would give the business owners here who maybe just now realizing they're going to exit their company and they need to be prepared for that at some point. So Michael, we'll start with you. Just any last words of wisdom for the business owners?
I have to think about that for a moment.
Okay, Debbie?
I think developing your people and keeping the culture and really taking your time to work through whether it's going to be a private equity company, strategic partner, or whoever you end up exiting. Start planning now, even if you don't have it in your mind that you're going to sell. We didn't. We were like, Michael kept saying, we're never going to sell, we're not going to sell, we're not going to, and I'm like, we're going to sell. We're going to sell. At some point, we're going to sell. So I would just say, go ahead and just plan on that, whether it be a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. At some point, you will either want to sell or be forced to sell, or, it'll be the next generation. So develop now.
It's never too early to start the planning process, right? The extra bench strength as you maybe grow the business. And then don't forget about yourself as you're planning what's next, that succession planning, what you're going to do after you sell that business.
Sonny?
The same actions and behaviors that make for a great exit make for a great business. Have an amazing culture and an amazing leadership team and great relationships with your customers and clarity about why your business exists in the world and be super organized. Like all of those things, they make a business more fun to own and more fun to work on, and they make for more options in your exit. The thing about the exit is, again, it's not just can I squeeze the next nickel out, it's can I create a lot of choices so that I get to make a good choice for all those stakeholders. The better the business you have, the more choices you get to make.
I'm going to come back to you, but if anybody's got any questions for this group, if you would just stand up and we'll get you a microphone. No questions. I got the ask no questions. So, Michael?
For me in closing, I would say it's critically important, as most entrepreneurs have this fallacy mindset, and I owned it for a long time, that if you want the job done right, I gotta do it myself. Okay, that is so opposite and so wrong. You if you've got someone in your organization that can do it 65% as good as you with hope to get to 75 and 80, give it to them now and stretch them. Otherwise, you'll be the CEO hero that you guys talked about a second ago, and that's really going to diminish the value of your business when the day comes for you to exit. Your value in your business is exponentially higher when you can demonstrate to the buyer that they've got a team that can run it without the CEO, without that one guy. Am I accurate?
Yeah,
that's the value.
That's the test.
The depth.
If you can leave for 6 months and it runs
As good or better than
as good or better, yeah.
Yeah, I would say don't let your own ego diminish the valuation of your business.
And allow others to fail, because unless you fail, you can't grow, stretch, and learn from
Celebrate
that.
failure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'll just say, in wrapping up, one of the lessons learned that I was fortunate enough to sell a business, but still have other businesses, and you mentioned it, Sonny, is that when you go through a process, you've got to get kind of everything in order, and it's pretty all-consuming for a while to sell a business, but the better prepared you are, and the more you learn about the process. I mean, it may be worth just talking to somebody, even anybody up here, talk through the process, but the more prepared you are to sell, the more you have your files in order, the more you doing monthly financials, and you're running a business as if you wanted to present it to be sold, the better your business is going to be, whether you sell it or not. And so plan now, get prepared, like you said, whether we're going to sell it in a year or 15 years or never. The more prepared you are to sell a business, the better your business is going to operate. And that in turn is going to increase your valuation of your business, certainly. So anyway, thank you guys so much for your time. And sorry we didn't have a chance for questions, but I'm sure all of us are available. You can catch us on a break to ask any questions that you've got. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.